Legends of a giant human-like creatures are surprisingly common in the United States. It was deep in the heart of the South that one of the most unusual types of these creatures was first sighted: a tusked ape man. The residual impact of strange encounters still lingers in the Mississippi woods to this very day. The first encounter, 1868. The first report of this strange creature surfaced way back in 1868, tucked away in the comfortable southern landscape of Mississippi. A group of hunters from Franklin County were tracking game in the woods accompanied by their pack of hunting dogs. The group had already made their way into the woods before noticing that something wasn't right. They found odd, large footprints in the ground, and they were fresh. According to the men, the tracks appeared to have been made by some creature with backwards-facing feet. The men knew the creature wasn't far. The dogs were barking and roweling themselves in defense. The men hardly had enough time to speculate before this huge, monstrous beast made itself known. It emerged from the trees and stood before the men. The report suggests that it was no taller than a human, but it had large muscle structures. The men recounted with certainty. The beast had long, thick, dark brown hair covering its body and two large tusks protruding from the top row of its teeth. It towered before the man, menacing and wild. The hunters, fearing for their lives, released their dogs, hoping to thwart the beast and escape safely. But things quickly took a dark turn when it grabbed one of the dogs, killing it with a chomp with its incredible tusked mouth. In the final moments of this terrifying confrontation, the men fired their guns. The beast roared and shrieked with a sound that they claimed they'd never heard before or since. It ran towards the Mississippi River where it began to swim. The men knew then that their pursuit was over. The beast had managed to escape the group of hunters. What did the Mississippi tusked ape look like? Following the initial sighting, residents in the area began to spread the warning of their story. The tale of the creature spread, and the beast became known as the Mississippi tusked ape. Some of the key descriptive features were long, thick, dark brown hair, two large tusks growing over the top row of teeth, large backwards-facing feet, height similar to that of a human, larger muscle structure than a human, spotted in and around southeast Mississippi. For hundreds of years, thousands of people have shared incredible stories of these strange hairy beasts. Intense sightings persist into this day. The incredible 1868 tusked ape encounter has been shrouded in uncertainty for more than a century. The people who reside in the area maintain this legend to this day. Though the men who confronted this incredible creature are long since gone, the story of their faithful night lingers on. So if you're planning to explore the woods in southeast Mississippi, beware of the descendants of the tusked ape. Grayish-brown haired creature jumps a barbed wire fence, 1998. In 1998, during the cold winter months of February, two young men, approximately 16 years old, were rendered speechless after encountering what they claim could have only been a Bigfoot. While on a camping trip on family-owned property near the Gus Engling Wildlife Management Area, the two teens allegedly got a look at a massive upright creature from about 20 yards away. At approximately 2 a.m., the young men were spotlighting for rabbits. The two teens were slowly fanning out to spotlight when they saw something much larger than a rabbit. Just ahead of the light, they noticed something big, allegedly 8 feet tall, and moving quickly trying to avoid the light. The boys said the creature appeared to have grayish-brown hair covering its body and long arms. The creature allegedly crossed a 5-foot strand of barbed wire fence with no hesitation and great ease. The witnesses reported hearing no sound in the event of the crossing. This report was published after the two boys' parents saw a special report with Jonah Fitzgerald on NBC Channel 56 of Tyler and Longview about the TBRC and Bigfoot sightings in East Texas. Parents of the two teens contacted the TBRC and put the boys in touch with researcher and investigator Craig Wooleder. Wooleder's report said that the two young witnesses sat in stunned silence for a few moments before leaving the area as quickly as possible. Hunters regularly claim that they encounter the wild man of East Texas due to the amount of time they spend in the woods. Hunters are outdoors and remote areas significantly more than the average person, seeking the perfect hunting spot. Though hunters' reports of Bigfoot encounters are perhaps more lengthy than others, they're certainly not the only ones encountering the creatures. According to the TBRC, in October of 1998, Another report was made near the southeastern Houston and Anderson County border. The report did not come from a hunter, but rather a local man that pulled his vehicle over in order to relieve himself. The man allegedly stepped from his truck into the edge of the woods approximately 20 yards away and began to take care of his business. The witness said that he began to hear leaves crunching under what sounded like heavy footsteps. Nervous, the man quickly finished his business and ran back to his truck away from the woods. According to the report made by the TBRC, as the witness made his way back to his vehicle, he noticed that when he stopped walking, so would the footsteps of the unknown stalker that was coming from the darkness of the woods. Suddenly, the heavy footsteps that had been stalking him began to gain speed. The frightened witness bolted for his truck. He then jumped in and fled the area. The man claims that as he was speeding off, he looked in his rearview mirror and saw something big and black standing on two legs in the middle of the road behind him. The Fur-Coated Man, Miller County, 1969. We have thought a long time before writing this, because I'm getting on in years and my memory might not be on target anymore. I was a married man in 1969 with two strapping sons. Lonnie was almost 11 years old, and Seth had 12 years on him. It was a cold and rainy day, and we were returning from a family get-together over the holidays. My wife and I were in the pickup, and the boys rode in the back, in the bed of the truck under tarps in their sleeping bags. We had left around 8 or 9 at night and headed north on 71 to Texarkana where we farm. The road isn't that wide, so I suddenly see this thing a ways off in the distance in the high beams of the truck, but I didn't know what I was seeing. The closer we got, I started thinking, that's strange, and knocked on the window of the back of the truck to get my boys' attention. My wife was asleep, but she woke up to more noise that I made, and she sat up in her seat. That's when she sees the same figure I was looking at. And she says, it's a man walking in a fur coat. It was very cold that night, and she thought, it being Christmas and all, we should offer to give this character a ride. But it didn't take long before we got close enough to realize that was no man in a fur coat, and we weren't stopping to give it a ride. As we passed it, the man or thing stopped walking and just stood there, dumb-like, staring at the headlights. It couldn't have been startled because we were coming on for quite a bit of distance. It raised its arm to shield its eyes from the light, and the arm and hand were thick, hairy, and muscular. The big underside of the palm of the hand was pink and brownish towards the light, and it pretty much blocked the details of its face. The boys stood up and looked over the cab of the truck at this thing. They went silent, and their mouths fell open. What was it? It had shaggy hair, all brown as I recollect, long over the face, but it seemed like a man's face, from what I could make out, with all the hair and whiskers, with shorter hair on the body. It had hair on the legs, but had caked up mud from the knees down, like it had been wading through a swamp or bayou or something. I remember it being quite tall, huge in the chest. As we passed this thing, it screamed and yelled like it was in pain or maybe in terror. A strange noise I'd never heard before. My wife and I looked at each other, and the boys screamed out of fear and dove under the tarp. I remember thinking as we drove off, what was that thing? I don't think we talked about it anymore that night. If we did, I don't remember what was said. During milking the next day, the boys asked me what we saw on the road last night. But I didn't have an answer for them, so we dropped the subject for the next 10 years. Until one day, my brother and his crew came to visit, and they mentioned the Fouke monster. I listened and asked him to describe what he had heard about the thing, and then we told him about what we saw in 1969. His mouth fell open, and he said, "You probably seen the Fouke monster. Y'all were on the road to Fouke, right?" I don't know what else to tell you. The screamer on the road is all I know besides it was hairy and good-sized. We retired and live near Blanchard now. There are rumors of the monster from years ago, but nothing in the papers lately. If you hear something about it that's more recent, we want to know about it. I hope this helps you in your research. Bigfoot seen in Trinidad, Texas, summer 1992. It was the summer of 92, and I was mowing a 200-acre hayfield on the ranch that I worked for. The specific location was on the banks of the Trinity River. It was midday, and the temperature that summer was well into the triple digits. I decided to take a break and get off my tractor and went down to get some relief from the sun and the shade on the riverbank. When I got there, I noticed there were several large turtle shells that had been torn in half, and the insides were eaten out. These were all fresh and they still had blood on them. I counted 24 halves, which translates into 12 turtles in all. These were not small turtles either. They were all about 12 inches or larger across the back of the shell. Right next to the turtle shells was a huge butt print in the dirt. I was amazed at this huge butt print, and who would eat all these raw turtles? Who would have the strength to rip those turtles in half like that? While I was observing the scene, I got this really bad feeling that I was being watched, and then I heard a deep growl. I looked around, but I didn't see anything. But I could feel something was watching me. So considering the situation, I decided it would be best to go back to the tractor and finish mowing instead of hanging around that area any longer. As I was making my way around and I got about halfway back to the tractor, a sparkle caught my eye. I looked at it, and there was a creature standing at the edge of the field in the weeds. The first thing that got me about this thing was its size. The weeds came around to its waist area. I'm 5'11", and they came right up to my armpits. So the fact that the weeds only came up to this thing's waist meant it had to be huge. As I walked along, I continued to stare at this thing because I felt like if I took my eyes off of it, it'd be gone. As I got closer, I could make out even more detail. It was covered with hair, but not thickly covered. You could see skin under the hair, and it began to sparkle as the sweat was glistening in the sun. The hair was about 1 to 2 inches long, and I could clearly see defined muscles in the torso. I remember distinctly how muscular the chest was. The creature was light tan in color, and the skin was darker in color. And I remember that the head came up to a small point. I was trying to get a better look at the face, but I had to turn the corner, so I took my eyes off of it. And when I made the corner, I looked back, and it was gone. The closest I ever got to it was about 70 yards away.